Welcome to the Compromised to Alchemized podcast, and I'm your host, Dr. Neil Bolton-Donnie. I'm excited as you join me in this journey to listen to my conversations with some of the leading experts in the field of healing from a broad range of disciplines. Welcome to the Compromised to Alchemized podcast with Dr. Neil Bolton-Donnie. Plus, I've got Eddie Horowitz with me. And actually, he calls himself Eddie Witz in this new iteration. He's just got, his own branding company, but then he's also a musician. And I just think he has healing vibes that come through his music. And I wanted to interview him, not only because of the process he's been through in his own journey of going from compromised to alchemized. And then that's a lot of this. And then I'll explain that more. And he's come in contact with some, remarkable healers who I think I have been so fortunate to be in the mix with and to tag team mostly, indirectly. But then we had the great pleasure of having Dr. George Gonzalez pop into the last session I had with Eddie, and we got to just collaborate on working with Eddie. And so, anyways, that was quite wonderful. And then also, I know that Eddie has learned a lot, but not only that, I think he's got this way of imbuing his music with what he knows will elevate people. I think in their inspiration, in their hope, and in their hopefully their resonance. But I can feel it. I can feel like the goodness coming from his music. That it comes from that deep place of knowing that we've been given a lot. He speaks about this in the podcast. We're quite privileged and blessed, right? He uses those words, I think, a lot. But so then, therefore, how can he, extend that? So I think he's got a lot that comes through his music, and I feel like this is a foray for me from interviewing some who go into different modes and modalities of healing, for sure. And all over the place, I've had some extraordinary, just kind of like different out of the box, clinicians and healers and just amazing people on. And then, there's been kind of a shift with, even having Dr. Amy Albright on to share more about her work. And so reference that, if you will. And then I think getting into sound, music, and but yeah, it starts with pain with Eddie and his journey and dealing with shingles that led to the Ramsay-Hunt syndrome that he was dealing with, and facial nerve issues, paralysis, and then, but he's, and he'll mention these people, and but he's been to a lot of people. I was referred, Eddie was referred to me by Deb, who runs the Woodland acupuncture place, and then, he's had too many to mention of like great people who he's worked with PEMF therapy, with massage, with chiropractic, with, the acupuncture that Deb's done. And then Deb collaborated with a dry needling expert, I think on the East Coast, to have that guidance where she would do the dry needling, and that helped him extraordinarily. He's been helped by all these amazing people. So I think that it's really beautiful and wonderful to see all of that. And then, of course, the floor of the mouth work that I did with him, and whole body, just categoric work, has helped him with his vocals, but just bringing another part to his journey. So I'm excited for what he's experienced in our work together, but I think even more than that, I'm really intrigued by what his life is going to carry through it even more as he moves to Australia with his family, and also as we continue to know each other. And as I've seen just the way that he has such immense gratitude and such like presence and such joy, despite and through his struggles, I think is a great, I'm going to call it display of how we can remain when things are rough and tough. But I think he does a good job of saying, like, he feels like there's people out there that are going through way worse, and that's true in the world right now. So I also felt convicted to say that, well, I'm just so fortunate that I have this, fortune to and benefit to be able to be who I am, working with who I am, and I know that there's just a whole lot of people in the world who need a ton of love right now. So but as for this episode, I'm really excited for you to hear what Eddie has to share, and just know that there'll be more, and there's more context and more excitement to share with us, and also with those like Dr. George Gonzalez, who I'll be collaborating with, and many others. So have a great time listening to this, and I look forward to hearing your thoughts. I've got Eddie Horowitz, who I had the pleasure to have in my offices for the past, month or so. And we've had some deep sessions, and I'll just say Eddie found me through Deb, the acupuncturist that is in the same office as Ina Henry, the lactation consultant who brought me in. So I'm grateful for Ina connecting with Deb, and Deb referring you to me. And then we had Dr. George in the room just a minute ago, and he's a genius chiropractor that does quantum neurology chiropractic. And look, there's just like Eddie has sought out amazing people to pursue healing for issues, and but what I've been fascinated by is hearing, as soon as I heard you play a recording of your vocals, and then you told me after our first session what it unlocked in your voice. You had already told me about what Dr. George unlocked and how he muscle tested you while you were singing, and you saw things come back online. Of course, we give a shout out to Dr. Silkman. We give a shout out to all the
so many
healers. But I just, I really wanted to take these few minutes that we had after a couple hours of a session to talk about the overarching journey you've been on. I know for me, I feel like we've come across each other's paths, and I feel fortunate to be able to, just be a person in your repertoire, just covering one thing in what I do. And then and then you told me pretty soon you're moving to Australia, which is an epic thing for you and your family. You told me you were just performing, you and yourself, you're a gifted musician, and more than that, I think you were just getting ready to go do what do you call it? Scratch vocal. I don't know the terminology of your industry, but it was like scratch vocals with Hall & Oates, or one of the guys from Hall & Oates, or something like that.
John Oates, working with John and laying down a scratch vocal of his hit song "Out of Touch."
Oh, sorry, you got to say that again.
"Out of Touch," Hall & Oates, "Out of Touch." It's a song that I'm working on right now, covering with John's support. Laying down that scratch vocal. It's a high key, and we had worked together, and I'm going to go back and dig into that song, but I guess you were saying, legacy work, dream work is really what we're talking about, and it just dawned on me, this healing journey that I'm on, and being able to let the universe conspire in my favor has been my mantra for a while now, since like 2019, which is when I sat down with a beautiful healer named Troy Casey, who's known as the Holistic Health Nut on Instagram. And we sat down. He said, "Eddie, until you crystallize what your dream is in life, the universe is not going to be conspiring in your favor. So let's sit down and let's figure that out. Let's get on the whiteboard." And that was a really powerful session with him. And then it kind of set the path towards me leaning into what my superpowers are as an entrepreneur. And then, of course, I had this shingles attack in the pandemic that led to this partial paralysis, which was the biggest blessing to open up my abilities of sourcing talented people to surround myself so that I could accomplish my dreams, is one of my superpowers, it seems. So even with my music, it's how do I attract the best musicians and the best engineers, the best producers? And then if I show up like a sponge and do the work, then maybe I'll improve as an artist or a performer. Same with, and then of course what I've done is the music is path for me is part of my healing journey. It's, anything that brings you joy and brings you fulfillment is going to keep you away from depression and from other things that hurt your health. And when you have an ailment or you have an injury or something, it's going to be easier to heal if you're excited about, that you're on your dream path in life. And of course, I always go back to the main thing is we're the 1% of the 1% of the population of the world that even has the privilege of having the time and the space to get into a state of parasympathetic and to go after our dream. Because the majority of the world is in a state of fight or flight. And they can't even think about, what's my dream and what's my destiny. It's so us privileged people that are in that position, what a waste if we don't sort of take the time to meditate and figure that out. And I'm still figuring it out. I'm lucky that I'm a father and I have children and I'm a husband, and I'm an entrepreneur and I own my own company, and so I have employees. So I get to play a lot of roles. When you think about, what's the legacy that you want to leave behind, that's why I was excited when I got into doing music for the first time, was I realized, wow, this music, when you create a song, it's like a living, breathing entity. And when you're long gone, that could still sort of live and people could connect with the experiences that I was trying to portray in the lyrics and in the music. And then I realized even more that these songs become like almost tattooed and imprinted on my being and on my soul. Like I get to take them with me for eternity and leave them in this physical world that has such a limited time to be in and get to practice and play in, and to leave it there. So I don't know, it just seemed like there's not a lot of things that you could go after that give you passion, fulfillment, that could also like be legacy building stuff. So writing a book, shooting content, creating, films or other content. Obviously, we can leave that behind, like what we're doing right now to help people. Yeah. So, and it's been chaotic for me because, with my condition on the face, when so many things, you have so many muscles in the face, and when everything goes haywire, it can drive you a little bit insane. And you get so obsessed with, I have to fix my eyebrow. I have to get my eyebrow to work, or I have to get this nostril to like pucker or whatever. And it drives you crazy where you can't heal yourself because you're just panicking and you're running around like a chicken with your head cut off. All this work is just letting me realize life goes by quick. So if you could live in the moment and be present and just go with the journey and know that everything can't get accomplished in 5 seconds and just relax into that, then you might actually start living in the moment and start enjoying your moment. And I'm constantly battling, I'm thinking about work, I'm thinking about all these rush scenarios or things that we're rushing to do. But back to the alchemist and the universe always conspiring in your favor, you just got to remember, well, maybe it's good that I got delayed because I avoided a catastrophe that could have occurred. You just always have to think about the positive in this life that we're living, so that you don't drive yourself insane.
Yeah, and I got one or two more questions for you because You've been gracious to let me ask you these questions, and but yeah, no, I love that. I mean, actually, I didn't even tell you like much about what we were going to talk about. You were just like, I'm up for it, and
I'm ready.
You're ready. Well, I don't know if you know the context of my podcast. It started out as the embryology podcast. I quickly wanted to broaden it to how can we go from a compromised airway, right, because that's my niche field, to an alchemized airway. And my wife, I was saying that phrase, and she's like, I love that, but what if you said compromised to alchemized? I'm like, oh, yeah, because it's not, I agree with that fully, because it's not an airway. The airway belongs to a person and a being, and we are multifaceted dimensional beings. And I derive so much enjoyment out of beatboxing, singing, whistling, my creativity with dance and movement and
I noticed today you were whistling during our session.
Oh.
And it actually made me happy because I said, "Well, he really loves what he does." You know.
Actually, I'm not aware that I was whistling.
When humming and whistling.
When it's babies, I'm usually like using sound to help still their nervous systems, but I didn't even know. So
okay,
that's a great thing. But yeah, so I've interviewed healers of all kinds on this podcast, and there's just, for me, there's like this, clear path that the conversations have gone on, and I just felt like with you, I'm like, one, you don't fit the mold of a healer in the way that I've had interviews with body workers or dentists or pediatricians or myofunctional therapists or neurofeedback specialists. But then I thought about your music, and I'm like, yeah, I'm just interviewing you because I felt compelled. My heart led me to, and you're up for it. But one of the biggest avenues of healing for me has been sound, and through music. And I just know with what you put into your life and music, and the vibes that you've talked about, but I just know out of that comes this place where if people are met by those sounds and by what you're streaming through, not only is it full of good music and good sound and your passion and your heart and your legacy, and look at this journey you've been on and how much you've overcome and what you pursued and the hope and the optimism you live with. I can't help but think you're building that into your waves. And when you stream out these waves across the globe, yeah, like you said, you convicted me with that. Like, how many people, like, what is the minute percent of people out there in the world right now that don't have the privilege? We have privilege. And I am quick to say that, but I'm quicker to say that now after you said it. Super privileged.
Right.
And I do think, like, something of your sound is going to carry through, as it already has, but in a new way now, to wallop people with goodness and with healing. And I can't help but think all these people you've sought out are building your sonic healing architecture portfolio of like what goes into your voice when it comes out is these master healers that you've seen and all the, I just have great respect for them. And then you are now a portal through which people can interact with that. Not even to mention all the other things in your life. Like you just mentioned James Caan, right? And so maybe you talk about James Caan for a minute, but then how he was your high school coach, or he was
soccer coach.
But then, if you would then tell me, I'm gonna re-ask you. Yeah, as Santiago is the shepherd who in the Alchemist, the old king tells Santiago, if you pursue your personal legend, the universe conspires in your favor. The soul of the world and the hand that writes it all will make sure things, in paraphrase it, happen in a good way for you. Do you see, like, as you go to Australia and as you look beyond that, is it changing for you what your destiny calling is, or no? Is this just like different scene and setting and place, and what is that personal legend? What do you think will happen through what you put out there into the world? I think you said it, but just to reframe it.
No, it's a big new chapter moving down under to Australia, and obviously a lot of it is for my son and my daughter, and to help them grow up and experience a different experience than what they've only known in Los Angeles. I'm so grateful though for my almost 50 years in California and Los Angeles. It's easy to trash talk it now or to say that it's polluted or it's overcrowded, but we're on the edge of the Malibu Mountains and Topanga Canyon, and it's just gorgeous all around Agoura and Calabasas. And I've spent a big chunk of my time in this area of the Palisades in Malibu. And if you drive up and down the coast of California, like I talked about, it's one of the most beautiful scenic routes along the coastline. But in Australia, it's my wife's dream to get the kids to experience kind of how she grew up in Australia. There's a lot more oxygen blowing off the Antarctica right there on the easterly point of Australia, right just north of Tasmania. And I think for my healing journey, getting my bare feet in the sand on a daily basis is going to be one of the most healing things I could do, just taking walks with my wife and our dog Nugget that we're going to transport out to Australia. She's the most expensive passenger on this trip. With Australia, it's like I feel like I could lean into Eddie Witz, the artist, and less, Eddie Horowitz, the entrepreneur, which has been the role I've been playing for the last 20 years. I'm still going to continue to be an entrepreneur and create and design products for brands, but I'm looking forward to, the chance to share music in a live setting, as well as get your music played on the radio, and have people listen to your music on streaming platforms is a powerful thing. And when the message of the music is positive vibes and healing vibes, and I get to collaborate with ethereal artists and other artists that are really about spirit and healing, to me, that's definitely a dream come true, right? Because we only have such limited time in this vehicle that we have right now. So it would be so cool to experience doing some of that stuff as well. Because let's face it, as an entrepreneur, a lot of time you're spending on the computer and on the phone, in an office or what have you. What I know about my quality of life in Australia and how it's going to differ so much is the time zones, right? Because when I wake up in the morning in Australia, it's already late afternoon in Los Angeles. It's evening in the East Coast of New York. So by mid-afternoon in Australia, everyone's asleep in America, right? Even early afternoon. So that means that I have more time to spend with my family during the days. I could go surfing and not be worried about, calls and interruptions because everyone's asleep, So that's kind of a secret weapon that I've experienced in my travels to Australia. Because when you are an entrepreneur and you're running your own company like the way I am with Brand Labs, you're pretty much 24/7. The moment you wake up to the moment you sleep, you're dealing with work-related stuff. But when I traveled to Australia, all of a sudden, it's not like that anymore. So I think I'll have a better quality of work life out there as well.
Yeah. Well, if there's too many ways to go with this one, I'm going to add a little bit of context later today. So just know that I'll be introing you,
right,
outroing you, telling you your whole life story. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know it yet. But yeah, no, I appreciate your sharing, and also,
I'm actually the life story is the big story. So I was referred to a brilliant author and writer, Elise Krenzel, who I hired to help me write sort of, because I'm doing my first album. This is my debut album. It's called I Am, Eddie Witz and the Most High. And so she's forcing me to go back from childhood, birth to today and figure out the big story of why I'm doing this and who I was and my experiences. And I highly recommend anyone do that, and if you need help, hiring a writer to kind of encourage you to get it out of you. Because then I'm writing sort of the blogs of the songs, the message of the songs have their own stories, and then the whole story of the album and how it all interconnects with who I am and who I'm trying to become and where I'm trying to go. Anyway, sorry to interrupt.
That's not an interruption. Yeah. That's the substance. Right. But I have a feeling like if you'll grace me later into the future, I would love to interview you again, talking more about like specifically that, because I love it. I've done some very, very like significant detailed charting of my life and sifting through moments and delving into, just even the other day, yesterday, I was trying to feel out why my feet felt sore, and I could tell it was from when I was like 5 months and 24 days old, going back to like probably a jab that I got in my heel, from all that stuff. Well, anyways, I just feel like looking through the moments of your life are so important, especially when you can look at like how they build you and who you are today. So I feel like there's so much that I want to ask you. So maybe you just leave us with like a wise saying of, Eddie, And it could
No
be
pressure.
like to yourself when you're little, or to anybody that's like about to go into a big moment of change. What's your message of courage? What's your just whatever you feel that you just feel like comes to your mind, and share that.
I mean, my mantra over the last few years is been, every day leaning into forgiveness for yourself, forgiveness to others, being grateful for yourself and for others, and acceptance for yourself and for others. Forgiveness, gratefulness, acceptance is the key to keeping yourself sane and healthy and healing the people that you love and everyone around you. Um, and being kind to others and kind to ourselves. I'm definitely not perfect at it, but we can always strive. We're always, we feel guilty, which we shouldn't, because guilt is a wasted emotion, but maybe it's a good thing because it drives us and pushes us to try to better ourselves, be kinder tomorrow, and be more forgiving and be more loving. Um, it's really easy to get caught up in, pointing fingers and blame and anger and why me and all that sort of stuff. But if you want to live your dream and build your legacy, you got to get away from that, and you got to lean into forgiveness, gratefulness, and acceptance. And then the floodgates just start opening up.
Now I'm going to be selfish, not really, but I'm going to ask you. Okay, now I want to ask you two things. One, if you had limited to 5 words, or one to 5 words, describe what my work is, like in how you've come to me for sessions to do X, if you call X the work I do, or Neil is a XX, whatever. I mean, I'm not we can't use chiropractor, we can't use some of the words because I don't fit that mold. I had great respect for all the fields, but so I want you to tell me, like if you were telling us about the work that I've done. So tell me that in like 1 to 5 words, and then give me a sentence of how you benefited from what I've done, or what I've done has helped you with.
Well, I would say you're a speedy, intuitive architect, or uh, I mean, you told me the first session. You said we're re-architecting, or it's like construction, and we're re-architecting, and we're doing it so quickly. Normally you'd be lucky to spend 2 hours just fixing, your pinky finger, but it's hard to explain, what you do to the normal layman. But for someone like me that has been spending so many years painfully getting millimeters and centimeters of improvements on this and that, to experience something in an hour or two that you'd be happy if just, we just got your knee to feel better, but getting your Achilles, your legs, your inner thighs, your neck, your back, your ears, your throat, your there's so many parts of the body, and you're moving so quickly, releasing all this tension. And I guess what's good now is that I'm open to the awareness of being, trying to tap into my intuition, of knowing that your intuition is heading down the right path, and being so grateful and so aware of it in the moment, which is me showing up more aware in my life, because I'm very aware that in my past years, I just took everything for granted, and I just said everything should be working perfectly, and how lucky am I? God gave me this beautiful life and this beautiful body. The universe has blessed me, and I've never had any major problems. And life's biggest gift to me was slapping me in the face with a shingles attack, so that I could have a deep respect for how the body works, and then start earning that that awareness and that trust. And it takes so much time to get that. For me, it took a lot of time, because I needed needles in my mouth, and hyperbaric oxygen chambers and leeches and all these things that were uncomfortable and painful, that gave me a little bit more awareness of, oh yeah, there's some interconnectedness here. And it never ceases to amaze me. So I get with Dr. Neil, and we're talking about the floor of the mouth. And that just opened up my mind. I'm thinking, well, all I've had is people in my mouth, stretching my mouth and trying to get my face to move, but no one's talked to me about tongue tie yet. And you're telling me that could unlock all these everything? That was mind-blowing to me. And then he's showing me in the session how that's working in real time. So it's just another reason for us to be grateful and know how blessed we are that we're given a body that's gifted to work. You know, we're not in wheelchairs. Nothing against people that are in wheelchairs, because that's been, my experience working with my friends that are unfortunately in wheelchairs. If you ever to feel grateful and to feel, blessed, those challenges are severe. But for us to have legs that are working and arms that are working, to be able to experience the body going back into relaxation and working again is really miraculous. And it gives you a much higher respect for the process of it. Like I could just go, thank you very much, Neil. Now I'm back to what I always was used to. Everything's working great, but I'm never going to take it for granted anymore. And I think, doing this maintenance work too, whether it's seeing Dr. Neil and your other practitioners once a month, once a year, be kind to yourself and know that just like a car, you got to bring it in for a tune-up, every 6 months or every 15,000 miles, right?
Yeah.
So the body, I think, is similar. We've got Lamborghinis, but you got to bring the Lamborghini in to get a tune-up. So, yeah.
Well, thanks, Eddie. Appreciate you saying that. I was looking for a few words in a sentence, but you gave a whole lot more.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's totally fine. So yeah, and you spoke chill like.
We can edit. We'll edit the part where it's just a
few
few words.
Good. It's speedy, intuitive architect. I think SIA. I like it. We'll just use that for now at least. All right. Well, thanks for being up, for sharing. Yeah, this is my Compromised to Alchemized podcast with Eddie Witz, and looking forward to seeing what you all think about it. So, take care.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
In these conversations, we do deep dives, and resources are aplenty, so please tune in and enjoy, and I'm so excited to have you along for the journey.